am the Lord. Nelson, that is. Quite shocking.
This is Danielle Weber, and you're listening to Live and Loud with the Lord. Nelson, that is.
Yes. Perfect.
I nailed it. Even Alessandra's like, yeah, you did.
Walking the spot and we lit, yeah. Walking the spot and we
Ladies and gentlemen, kings and queens, it's the Lord. Nelson, that is, yeah, the big guy with the big show. Welcome back to another high energy episode of Live and Loud with the Lord on the CMS network in proud partnership with 5 Royals ENT. And this is where we turn the volume up in the best of ways up on pop culture conversation and unstoppable creativity. Now, today we're honored to shine the spotlight on a true visionary, a dynamic force in the cannabis industry, and a fearless leader making serious waves from the heart of New Haven, Connecticut. She's a healthcare professional, a passionate advocate for social equity, and now the founder of the blazing new cannabis brand that's turning heads and lighting up the game. I just like those adjectives that are described. This is a good thing. It's a good thing. So this episode is more than just talk. It's a celebration of hustle, healing, and higher purpose. So sit back, spark your curiosity, and get ready for some real talk with the real queen. It's time to get live and loud with the one and only KEBRA Smith-BOLDEN. Yeah, the mastermind behind Lit. I love it. Yes, indeed, young lady. So, New Haven, Connecticut. So, are you born and raised there?
Born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut. I was born at the Hospital of St. Raphael. No longer existed now. Yale owns everything, but yes, born and raised here.
Yeah. So what's the best thing about, being from there?
Honestly, I feel like people who are born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut have a special love for New Haven. Okay. Definitely a sense of community that I don't see in a lot of other places. Of course, any inner city community where you have people who are, disproportionately impacted by laws and, racism and all these things, like there tend to be trauma effects. And so that makes it hard sometimes to connect with people. But New Haven, I feel like people have a special love for it, for our community, and we're pretty close. So I think that's the New Haven difference.
That's the New Haven. Okay, I got you. So see, when you say that about New Haven, I guess what I'm saying in my mind, I never thought about inner city or anything like that. I just, just my ignorance.
Oh, absolutely. Yale University is here, right, based in New Haven, and people tend to think of Yale, so they think upper class, upscale, right, that people are rich or, not having the poverty issues that we very truly have here. But New Haven was one of the first designed cities in which they made sure that they separated neighborhoods. So you'll have very high income neighborhoods, and then we have right next, like literally cross the street, and it's one of the poorest neighborhoods. So
Really?
that you'll see that around in New Haven a lot.
Wow. Well, listen, you're educating right now. Let me say that. So let me go to this. So there's a guy, I don't know if you know who he is. I think he's from Boston, and he's with Barstool Sports, right? And his name is Dave Portnoy. And he says New Haven pizza is the best pizza in the world. So
this is true.
So you agree with this?
Oh, absolutely. And I will almost go to fighting somebody who says otherwise. Usually people say they point to New York pizza or Chicago pizza,
right?
But New Haven is, Google us. We're number one pizza in the U.S. for sure. And we have a special way of making pizza here. Brick oven is primarily what we make, but we also specialize in pan pizza as well. So, we got a little variety of buttery, crispy pan pizzas and the oven ones.
So I had to ask that question because I watch him online all the time, and I'm just like, I like pizza. I like deep dish. I like New York pizza also, and I even tried. So I'm from South Carolina, and and so I tried to find a place that serves it. So I went and had one downtown. What was the place called? Blue or something like that. I can't remember the name, but anyway, it was like they were like, yeah, this is kind of like that, and I was just like, okay. And so he always, he always speaks highly of it. And so what's the name of it that you guys call it?
Oh, well, I mean, like I said, it's just the different cooking styles. So brick oven pizza versus like a pan pizza. But some of our top places, Pepe's Pizza was one of the first pizzerias in the United States. Sally's Pizza. There's like a whole street that, is primarily housed by Italian Americans and their businesses. It's called Wooster Street, Little Italy. And that's where those old school pizza shops are. But like Pizza House was my neighborhood pizza place, and they have more of the pan pizza. So it's kind of similar to, what was that? They used to give out book awards every year. It was another pizza place that had pan pizza. But so we have those two different styles.
Yeah. So I asked the question because it's a thing that they say, they call it beats is how they say it. A pizza, a beats.
Oh, a beats.
Right. There it is. I said that's gonna let me know if she's a professional. She's being honest with me.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not Italian. That's where the Italian pizza. We call pizza. Because the pizza in our hood.
I got you, no doubt about it. So now we'll move forward to some more real things. So, so what was KEBRA like as a child?
So my mom was 16 when she had me.
Okay.
And my dad was, I think, 18. He was like a football star here. And so basically, my mother and father both were still being raised. So I was partially raised by my grandparents. I was raised in church. My mom said when she was 16, she had enough mind to say, like, I have nothing to give this child, but I can give this child back to you, Lord. And so she said she dedicated me back to God, when I was first born, and she kept me in church. And so I'm very grateful for a foundation of faith that I've had my entire life, that if I'm having a bad day, a worship or a praise song will come to my spirit and lift my spirits. And I'm grateful that I have that, because a lot of people don't have that foundation.
True.
But yes, I was the kid, since I was so in church like all the time. I went to middle school with the Bible every day. And I would talk to people about the Lord and still do that to this day.
Right.
Pretty nerdy and corny. I'm still nerdy and corny a little bit, all throughout high school. But I always had really good friends and family support around me. But, I grew up in the inner city, so I faced a lot of the struggles and trials that most, young women who are growing up in the inner city does, especially back when, especially when I was little, my mom was again, a single teenage mother trying to work and do things would send me to babysitters. Those are not good situations for little girls. A lot of times, abuses happen, things of that nature. And I probably suffered just about every trauma a child in the inner city could, but again, I think that foundation of faith, always, feeling protected and loved by God, kind of kept me, because a lot of hurt people end up hurting people often, but I feel like because I had a different spirit, a different foundation, that I was able to not allow those situations to break me, but actually make me more sensitive to the needs of others and to be able to sense if someone, has experienced similar traumas and be helpful in that way.
You didn't let that define you. That's a beautiful thing. It really is. And I think that should empower people and will empower people and probably has already, probably more than you really know. And so as a teen, how were you? You kind of touched on it a little bit. So what was going on as a teenager in those teen years in high school and things like that?
I mean, I was very poor. Okay. My mom would give me $1, for lunch every day, but I decided I wanted to take the bus. So I would use my $1 on the bus, go downtown, meet my friends. We would go to school together. I had a friend who bought me lunch every day. God bless her heart, Melanie Alexander. Wow. To make sure that I had what I needed. But I was a teenager, so, there were times when I was sad or depressed or felt like, I didn't belong, I didn't fit in. I was really awkward. I just started wearing glasses now. If I had been wearing glasses back then, it really would have took me over the top probably. But, I had crooked teeth, wore braces, was very... I feel like I was outgoing still, regardless. But, at my particular high school, if you were in a certain level of classes, like they kept you off on your own floor and you had like all these different special classes. Now I realize was just them neglecting a large part of the school population, that they didn't feel were worthy of attention and extra time. Wow. And so I look at it differently. But at the time, we had our little group of kids that we were interacting with on a daily basis. And I really feel like I got a decent education. But one of the things that was really life-changing to an extent, and it really came back when I started doing this cannabis work. But my freshman year in high school, a young man that I had grown up with, had gone to preschool with. My mother knew his mother. He was shot and killed. Wow! My freshman year of high school. So I graduated in '94. So this is like 1990. And so when his name was Sebastian, when Sebastian was killed, they, closed down, they stopped classes for the day. They sent counselors in. Like, we were able to, meet up in the cafeteria and support each other and grieve together. And by the time, and that was the first person, and they did all that. But by the time I was graduating high school, people were being stolen from our communities left and right. Being thrown in prison, being killed, shot and killed, in different ways within our community. And they stopped sending counselors, and they stopped, allowing us to have that time to grieve. And they made us begin to normalize this thing, which wasn't really normal. And so then to later put it all together, that this was a direct result of the war on drugs, which was not a war on any drugs. They were the ones bringing drugs. It was a war on our community. It definitely kind of helped me fill in the blanks and understand why our community is the way that it is and why we have some of the issues that we do.
Wow. Great. Listen, thank you for that. That's really seriously, I'm a military kid, and I tell people a lot of times that there's a lot of things that I didn't see, and a lot of the people that I've grown up with or I know now that I've met outside that military family, because I'm still real close with all my military people that I've known, just the Army brat. But so many things that you learn, and as you're educating me right now, more than just things you see on television. You know, you see a lot of things on television and you're like, is it really that bad? You know, is life really like that? But thank you for going into that, you know, deeply like that. I really, really appreciate that, because I'm a person that sees everything. So when you said that, I was just watching it like a movie, like, and I was just like, oh man, you know, no, seriously. Thank you for that.
Of course. So
do you have any siblings? And if so, where are you in the order, if you have any siblings?
So I'm the oldest. Mm-hmm. Thank God my mama didn't start before 16. But I'm the oldest from my mom and my dad. They both have children separately. Mm-hmm. I was the only together child. Gotcha, so my mom got married when I was about 10 or 12, 10. And she has 3 children from that marriage. Okay. And my father has 3 additional children.
Okay. Gotcha. But you're the oldest. You are the top dog, and you still. And you're still just a baby. You're just a baby now. You know. You said 94. You graduated in 94, right? And I know you said you graduated in 94. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You just.
I'm pushing on 50 around here, but I earned every last one of those years. I'm proud of that.
She talking about pushing 50. You just a baby.
Okay. I'll be a baby.
Listen, you're just a baby, yo. It's all love, though. So, what genre of music was most prevalent in your home in your early to teen years?
Oh, well, in my home. Okay, so we're talking about 2 different things. So, my mother did not allow me to listen to any worldly music.
Really? All church music?
All church music. So, I always say, like, the stars for me were like the Hawkins. And the Clark sisters and the Winans. Oh my God. I was such a fangirl of the Winans. Like, it was crazy.
Oh man.
I actually gave my life to Christ at 6 years old at a Winans concert.
Really?
So it was primarily gospel music, but of course, when I went to school, like to this day, I don't know no 90s hip hop, the words to any song. Like I know I had to go back and try to learn the words, but I would know the chorus. You know, "Round the Way Girl," though, that was the one song in every line too. I loved LL Cool J back in the day.
LL, yes indeed.
But my first boyfriend, I remember we would sit on the phone and listen to Jodeci and Guy and, stuff like that, like till we fell asleep. So I still to this day, like I love gospel music. I start every day with a praise and worship. And so I have me and God have a little session every morning. But then the rest of the day, we hit the opposite for the most part. And so that's kind of always been because I love music. I think it's beautiful. I think God created all of it, and so I honor music and artistry a lot. Well, a lot.
Oh, 100%. Listen, I love music. Music is, as I always tell people, I'm like one of you say cornball and all those things. My kids always tell me, stop saying you're a cornball, Dad. You're cool, Dad. I'm just like, I've been around everything. And when I say it, I've been around it all. But I've always just been over there just chilling, kind of doing my thing, And so, no, it's all love. I get you. I understand it. But you have that foundation, though, that's a beautiful thing that you can stand on. It's strong. And
absolutely.
No, absolutely. I love that.
I thank my mom every day. Honestly, at the time, that was one of the reasons why I was like, I can't wait to get away from this house with these people. So I can listen to my music and do whatever. But I just really thank God. Like it was so ingrained in me that it's such a support mechanism in my everyday life.
Of course. Okay. So now let's move forward into what we're really here for. But I had to get the backstory though. I got to get that. I want people to really feel who you are and, why you do what you do. So.
Well, one thing I guess is significant that I didn't mention about my teenage years that I probably should is that I did become pregnant when I was 17.
Okay.
And I had my oldest daughter who is turning 31 next week. But so that kind of shaped the next stage of life. So, I just wanted to make sure I gave you that little bit to color the next part of the conversation.
No. Listen, Just like I told you, it's whatever you want to go. We could go way that way. We can go wherever you want to go. It's all love. But no, once again, young mother doing your thing, and now you still handled your business and look where you are now. So I'm just saying it's nothing bad. All of these things are like life lessons to me. And so what you really have is a success story, and it continues. It's just another chapter in your story. It's just it's your journey. So, I always say that, I don't live life with regrets. You make mistakes, you learn from those mistakes, and you just keep moving forward. You have to. Yeah. You can't sit back there and just keep worrying about that. You can't. So, it's a beautiful thing. That's your princess that has grown to be a beautiful queen. And so, listen, that's the only way I look at it. I am a very positive person. So.
Yep. And what the enemy meant for evil.
No.
God didn't allow it to be so. I went to college on a full scholarship.
Right.
And so I was able to continue my life because I didn't allow that to cause me shame and disrupt, my future.
That's right. Listen, I'm with you. High five. I applaud you, young lady.
Thank you.
I really do. So, when were you introduced to cannabis, and can you recall that initial feeling it gave you?
So I got like a little Bill Clinton-esque kind of first story where I probably tried cannabis at the time. It was weed, that's what we was calling it. As a teenager,
right?
Maybe like 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. But I'm pretty sure I didn't inhale because I remember having having the experience and thinking, what is everybody, so
right.
Like, why are they doing this? This is corny. But I don't think I was consuming properly. Right. So to be honest, I will say like throughout my later teens and early in 20s, mm-hmm. I dibbled and dabbled a little bit. So I don't really remember those experiences, to be honest. But I was a nurse. I became a nurse in my 20s. Mm-hmm. And so I was cautious about consuming because a lot, right. They drug tested and things of that nature. So, and it really wasn't my thing at the time. Mm-hmm. So I really didn't start consuming cannabis regularly until I was in my 30s. Mm. And I do remember that once I, actually inhaled and felt free enough to like consume, it helped. It was so amazing to me. It was like, number one, spirituality. I felt like it brought me closer to God. Mm. Like, I'm a very in my head person. So like, if you have faith in God, it kind of almost has to be like you believe the unbelievable, right? So for a person like me, I can't do that. But like cannabis helps me kind of like calm my brain down, turn it off a little bit, and allow me to be open to different things. So that was one of the first most significant things for me. Second, I'm the mother after that girl I had. I ended up getting married and I had triplets. And so really? I was, yes. Huh?
I said triplets.
Yes.
I have twins. That's why I'm laughing.
Oh, yes. I have two boys and a girl.
I have a boy and a girl.
Nice. Yep. So they're 23 now. So they were born when I was like 24 or something like that. And so, it helped me and I had become a nurse again in my 20s. So at the time, like I was working really hard to support my family. Mm-hmm. And so I, was stressed like and pulled in 50 million directions. Right. And I used cannabis to help me manage my stress. So it was just like something that allowed me to relax, something that allowed me to turn my brain off, something that would allow me to actually sleep. It was just a beautiful thing. I was like, Jesus, I should have been doing this whole time.
Listen to it. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. So what or who inspired you to want to be in the cannabis business?
So, I would say two things happened at the time. So I was married for a lot of years. I got divorced. I started dating again. I was dating someone and he was like, have you been looking? Because around this time, cannabis had been legalized for medical use here in Connecticut, and I'm a nurse, registered nurse. So, the person I was talking to, he was like, you should really think about, getting into this industry. It's gonna be big, and you're a nurse, it's healthcare, like, and you would have thought the person who I was talking to would have had a limited perspective, but he had vision, like, honestly. Shout out to you, you know who you are. But then at the same time, my grandmother, who was 88 years old, her name was Hattie Turner. She was a community servant. Again, I told you, basically, my grandparents raised me. This was my dad's mom. And so she was very important to me. She was 88, but she drove. She had a boyfriend. My grandma was cute. She was fly. She did stuff. She was living. She suffered an aneurysm. It devastated her mind, her body, her spirit, to be honest. But I'm a nurse, so I'm like, I could take care of my grandmother. I had taken care of my grandfather who had lung cancer, and so I was like, I could do this. And I just was unable to help my grandmother. Like, nothing I did was working. I had like the best of the best, like trying to help her, and she just was not participating in rehab, wasn't getting better.
Right.
And after the aneurysm, she was wheelchair bound. She was not eating on her own, not really talking or engaging, and just kind of there, And so I was just really frustrated one day with myself, not with my grandmother, but frustrated with my inability to like affect change for her. And this is honestly a true story. I'm praying and I said, God, please show me how to help my grandmother. Like, I can't do this anymore without your help. And immediately it came to my memory that when I was pregnant with the triplets, so it's like 12 years before, we were at something, and I was telling her, like, we were talking about pain, and my grandmother said she couldn't take traditional pain medications because they were ineffective on her. So she said, I smoke a joint and take a bath. And that takes care of all my arthritis pain and this, that. I was like, okay, grandma, Because at that point she was in her 70s. Right. So that memory came back, and I was like, thank you, God. I said, we about to get grandma high. This is what she needs. And so this was like my early 30s, so I wasn't consuming regularly at the time. But I had a caregiver that would come and sit with my grandmother, and she used to smell like weed all the time. So I was like, whatever you be doing, hook her up. I think this is what she needs. And within a month of her getting grandma high, grandma started walking with the walker, talking, engaging in conversation. Her appetite was up. She was eating. She was making jokes, things that just were not happening. Like, and I'm just like, at this point, I probably was a nurse for about a decade or so. And I was just like, I've been and I've always worked in the community doing home care. So those neighborhoods, remember I told you, is rich neighborhoods right next to very poor neighborhoods. I always worked in the very poor neighborhoods. And so I'm seeing my community never getting better. Like, I'm giving pills out every day, every week, doing everything the doctors are telling me, and then no one's getting better. I give my grandmother some weed, and in a month she's better. Wow. And so I'm like, I gotta look at this, So I found a school in Massachusetts. It was called the Northeast Institute of Cannabis. And they had this 12-course study on cannabis. And so I signed up. I drove to Massachusetts. Remember now, I got 4 kids, 5 jobs, probably a ailing grandmother, but I'm driving to Massachusetts on the weekend to spend Saturday and Sunday to take this course and learn everything I could about cannabis. And let me tell you, I was super engaged. I'm a nurse. I'm a biology major in college, so science, all that stuff. I'm nerding out on it. I'm enjoying learning about plant science, learning about a system. No one ever told me I'm a nurse. We got an endocannabinoid system, learning how the plant is grown and what the effects are and what gives you all the effects, the terpene, the profile, the entourage effect, all the stuff. And I'm super excited. But then what really ended up engaging, grabbing my attention was when I learned about prohibition. So there was a whole course on prohibition.
Really?
And I learned about a man named Harry Anslinger. And I don't know if you're, I don't know if your listeners are familiar with Harry Anslinger, but in the 1920s, he was the person who was primarily responsible for the prohibition of alcohol and enforcing those laws.
Right.
And so once alcohol was no longer prohibited, he needed something to do. And he just so happened to be a raging racist. And this is not, I'm not making it up. Find it everywhere. He made some very racist statements all throughout his career. But he saw that Black people, specifically jazz musicians and Mexicans, were consuming cannabis. Right. So instead of, referring to it, he immediately started calling it marijuana, so that it could be associated with the Mexicans and the others, not them. And went on a campaign across the country, state to state, getting states to prohibit cannabis, began to criminalize it so that the people who consumed it could now be incarcerated. So, and I had just the same time watched The 13th. I think it was around that same time. And that's a documentary by Ava DuVernay.
Right.
And it's about like the mass incarceration system and how the 13th Amendment was put in place. Right. So they had to end slavery, but this is a way to keep us enslaved. And the two kind of helped me put in perspective that story I told you about.
Yes.
Like immediately when I was sitting in class, that was the first thing that came to my mind, that all of this was started. Like Sebastian died, like all my friends went to jail or died or whatever because of a cannabis plant that not only did they know was not harmful. I thought when I heard about the prohibition class, I just knew we were going to hear like some people went on some mass murdering spree, after consuming cannabis. So they were like, we got to get rid of it. None of that happened. When I realized it was all about racism and that the war on drugs, most people who started their their interactions with the criminal justice system started with a $5 bag of cannabis.
Wow. And
to really start putting that together and realizing that this government completely fed drugs, guns, discord, took away resources in our community so that they could incarcerate us, they could break up and separate families, disempower us, break us, all these things. And I just got a righteous indignation. And I was like, if cannabis is legalized in Connecticut, I want to make sure that my people benefit from it, that people who look like me can become millionaires in this industry. Right. And I'm going to educate my community and I'm going to get them prepared, and at the time, the instructors for my course in Massachusetts, they were advocates because Massachusetts was legalizing around that time. And so like some of the people who were teaching the classes ended up being on like the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission. Shalene Title is one of them. Chanel Lindsay was on the advisory board. So these were people who were advocating for change and then becoming regulators or involved in the change process and creating the industry. And I was like, oh, I want to do that, And so I came back to Connecticut with all this information. I met or joined an organization called Women Grow. And that is a national networking organization that would have these monthly educational events. So I bought the license in Connecticut, started having monthly educational events about cannabis. I would invite all of my friends that I had been meeting through this national organization to come and speak to the community and inform the community about different aspects, from business to science to laws related to cannabis, all these things. After doing that for a few months, people started saying, well, what are you going to do in the industry besides this? And I was like, I guess I'm going to own a dispensary. I mean, it seems like the right thing to do, way to make money. And everybody was like, but you're in healthcare, like you're a nurse. Right. Like why don't, and this is healthcare. Why don't you do something healthcare related? And I was like, you're right. And so in 2017, I founded Canna Health. which were medical cannabis certifying centers. And I got people their medical cannabis cards, so the right to consume cannabis within the state of Connecticut. Now, at the time, people were like, "Oh, you're just trying to get people high and coming up with ways to get people high." And, I was attempting to medicate my community, which needs medication, needs to be medicated because of the trauma that has occurred in our community, and identifying those traumas. So part of the process of getting a medical cannabis card from a place like Canna Health, usually what you're looking to be diagnosed with is PTSD. But, in our communities, we don't just see PTSD is one event can cause PTSD.
Right.
And you're a military person. So, there's a difference between being in an urban environment, being in an environment where you can leave, you can leave a rack, and that is no longer your issue. You might have residual effects from that, but you're not there every day still experiencing that same trauma. In urban community, our traumas are in our homes. Our traumas are on our streets, and they are repetitive. So you see people who would come for evaluations for PTSD, which was a qualifying condition to get your cannabis card, thinking that they're, let me just come here and get my card. I'm sure I could say something that, will make you let me get approved. And then we'd had a questionnaire, and people would have to identify different traumas they've experienced through life.
Yes.
Most people of color who come from inner city community, most Black people, were checking off almost every box.
Wow.
And never thinking they're coming to game some system or something, and never really realizing that knowing someone who was a victim of homicide or committed a homicide, being incarcerated, knowing, having an addicted father or mother, all these things create multiple traumas. Right. And that's the reason why it was like a aha moment for a lot of people. And I'd be like, and that's the reason why you can't keep a job, because you're hyper vigilant, you're on edge about everything. We need to address this trauma, this hurt, this thing that got you, where you can't even have relationships with people. Right. And so I was able to start helping people identify that, referring people for ongoing therapy, and giving people a viable option that wasn't pharmaceutical, plant-based option to deal with their traumas. Right. At the same time, protecting my community. So if you had your medical cannabis card and you had cannabis in your car or on your person and you were pulled over, you can pull out your card, show the reason why you have cannabis, and not be arrested. Right. So it was a social justice act. And not only not be arrested, you also could not be kicked out of your home if you were living in the housing and they were saying you can't consume cannabis. No, I got my card. I have a medical right to do so. If your children, if you're involved in Connecticut's DCF, Department of Children and Family, if you're involved in DCF and they drug test you and you come up positive for cannabis, that's the reason they were taking kids. Right. But if you had your card, you were protected. If you were on probation or state probation or parole, and you had your medical card, your parole officer, probation officer would allow you to consume cannabis and not violate you and send you back to jail. Right. So people with limited vision thought I was just trying to get people high, but actually it was much more than that on many different levels.
No, I'm here. You just explained it all. That you just went into depth, and as you were speaking about it, it took me back to something you said a little earlier about normalizing something. So many times we go through so much stuff, and we've got to be strong, especially in our community. You got to be strong. It's not about therapy and things like that. You got to be strong. But then as they were checking off those boxes, trauma. You've gone through so much stuff. And as you said, you normalize those things. And wow. I mean, listen, thank you once again for that. That was so in-depth and beautifully said. And once again, I really want people to, even though I'm asking you questions and things like this, it's more like a conversation, but what you're doing is you're educating, people about what goes on. And that's in your neighborhood, but just think about this big country that we live in, or the world, and what so many people are going through. So beautifully
Absolutely.
said. Thank you very much for that. I really like that. And you see me really looking, I am listening to you. I really am.
Was like, is he like, girl, stop talking? Or is he like, girl, what you saying?
I'm paying attention. I am really that person. I love to run my mouth, but I love to listen, especially when somebody's saying something. Because, you know, I would always watch when you were talking about the guy doing that thing with the weed. And I look at shows like that. I love watching stuff like that. I really do. I love watching history like this. So anyway, but once again, this is about you. That's amazing. That was amazing. I really enjoyed that. So are any of your family in the business with you?
Yes. So Lit New Haven, can I just talk a little bit about like how we got to me being in the actual business, not as a joint supporting business.
Well, I'm going to say this. Yes, you can. I'm going to get to it, but yes, you can. You're rolling with it right now, so roll right on into it.
Yeah, because I want to tell you about my kids being involved and how they got here. So, of course, there was no industry here.
Right.
There was no opportunities for me to get involved in the industry. The medical market was sold up. You know, rich white folks were running this show. Right. And I had just come back from learning all this stuff. You know, and I decided I'm going to be an advocate. I'm going to our capital, which is Hartford, and I'm going to talk to legislators and tell them why we should legalize and why our community should be first. And I had never done anything like that before in my life. But you know, I at the time, you know, I had a couple of people who had been doing that. Jason Ortiz, who is now the executive director of the Last Prisoner Project. He happens to be from Connecticut, and I partnered with him, and we started an organization called Connecticut United for Reform and Equity. And we basically were advocating for legalization with social equity in language all throughout. And we worked on that for several years. I ended up being asked to be on the governor's social equity task force, where we were attempting to like put together this language and create what now exists to an extent, and was very instrumental in getting cannabis legalized. Right. And I tell people all the time, like you can create the industry that you want to see. Like you have the ability to kind of put this all together. Still to this day, you know, like I am opening a dispensary soon, and to this day, like I'm still up at the legislature trying to get this legislation right so that I can actually have we can all actually have viable businesses. Right. But we were successful in advocating for legalization, and it had 3 pillars that were, you know, they had to happen or we weren't in support. The first was that people who had cannabis convictions, because now we're saying that prohibition was wrong. Like there was no reason for it. So all of the people who suffered who ended up in the criminal justice system were there under false pretenses, essentially. So those people got their records cleared and expunged. That was one. Second was that communities, so not just individuals, but communities who were disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs would receive funds. So my community, New Haven, the inner city community, and like several others around the state would be recipients of that money. And then third was the creation of licenses and entrepreneurs in this space. And, you know, there was a process where if you qualified as a social equity applicant, that you could potentially receive social equity licenses. Right. So I did, once legalization happened, instead of taking a regulatory route like the people I've seen in Massachusetts, you know, I think I'm lit and cool and, you know, and then I love cannabis so much. I wanted to, you know, open a dispensary and grow cannabis. So I was able to win both joint venture dispensary license. So I'm opening a dispensary next week. And then I also was approved as a large scale cultivator, which also comes with 2 additional dispensaries. So in the end, well, in the middle, I'll have 3 dispensaries and large scale cultivation, which will give me an opportunity to create brands and special products that I believe will be specific for people in our community that will be able to consume cannabis in a safe way that I can actually guarantee because I grew it. So who works with me here at Lit, my daughter of the triplets. So my oldest daughter, she's 30. Her and her family moved to North Carolina last year. And she is a doula. So she helps women of color through pregnancy, supports the process. And she's also a lactation consultant. So she also helps with breastfeeding. So I'm very proud of the work that she does. Nourish Our Seeds is her company. And so she's not here. Otherwise, she'd be working here too. But my daughter, who is 23, she's one of the triplets. She was an office coordinator for a high school that she worked at. And so she's our operations manager, and she's doing an excellent job with, making sure this ship is running smoothly. And my son, who, so my ex-husband is also an entrepreneur, owns retail clothing stores. So my children have all worked with him in some capacity. And my son also worked at some very large chain stores and doing inventory. And so he's the inventory manager. So they were like building their skills for this moment. And then I have another son, the other triplet son, he's between his dad's store and me. And he'll be doing sales primarily. So it definitely is a family affair. I got a couple of family people, like families who work here. I got a mom, dad, and a son. Most of the young people, I know their parents. And then most of the adults I know from the community.
Awesome. No, that's awesome. Once again, you're keeping it like that. You speak about that. You're about community. It's a beautiful thing, young lady. It really is. It really is. So
and I'm really proud. Everyone who works for me is from New Haven. And about 75%, besides my kids and my friends' kids, about 75% of the people who are working here are the formerly incarcerated and definitely have had interactions surrounding cannabis with the criminal justice system.
Yeah, you're definitely on a mission, young lady. I love it. You're on a mission. You're handling your business. That's what's going on. Now, how did you come up with the perfect name for your company, Lit? I say that, listen, because my son, right? He's in the music and stuff. He's in Atlanta. One of my twins, right? He and his twin sister live in Atlanta. I have an older daughter also who's in the medical profession. She's a cardiovascular perfusionist. She does her thing. It's my baby. It's my oldest baby. That's my girl. And so, but he's got a song called Lit, and then everything's litty. So when I saw Lit, man, I was just singing the song, even though he's talking about all kinds of stuff. But anyway, how'd you come up with Lit? That's a perfect name for it.
Honestly, I don't want to be corny and tell y'all God did everything, but he really did.
There's nothing corny about God, young lady.
I know, but I should say cliche. She always says God did everything, but he really did. Like every step of the way, I graduated #1 in nursing school. I hardly ever could study. I had newborn 1-year-old triplets when I was in nursing school. I prayed every day, before every test, and God did. But Lit, I was trying to think of like how I, thought of this place, and I was just like, I just wanted to be lit. And I was like, I just wanted to be lit. I want people to come in here and feel lit, get lit, be lit, and this, lit. And I'm like, well, it's lit. It is.
It's perfect. I mean, it is perfect because of all of those things, especially, the slang of it. But then everybody knows that. Listen, everybody knows the term. Everybody does. And so it's just that one word that is just like, bam. It's just bam.
And then I literally have people saying it all the time, like randomly. I could go to Star's page and just take little clips of them and make it feel like they talk about me. I wouldn't do that. But
no, that is awesome. It really is. Well, how does being a healthcare professional add insight to Lit?
Well, because I understand how cannabis works in the body. I understand how the plant is made, what the plant consists of. I understand how things that are in our nature, in naturally existing things like terpenes, it's in food, it's in all of how it works in cannabis to create and elicit an effect.
Right.
Nurses are probably one of the most trusted professions around. So I will say that just because I have RN at the end of my name, I feel like it has helped people to legitimize the things that I'm saying and help them understand in a different kind of way. But being a healthcare professional, I am able to help people, direct people in different consumption methods, helping people with dosing and different things like that a lot of people can't do. And I have to do that kind of unofficially because my dispensary is an adult use dispensary. And there's a reason for that. A lot of people are a little critical, like, why didn't you do a hybrid, which means medical and adult use? And it was definitely my goal. I actually ended up getting delayed about 6 to 8 months because of the fact that I changed from hybrid to adult use. But the reason why I did that is because in a hybrid model, you have to have a pharmacist on site every hour that you are open.
Got you.
Which is cost prohibitive, to be honest. But I was willing to make the investment, so I had budgeted for 4 pharmacists to be on my team. And when I went to look for pharmacists, I could only find 1. And I'm like, with 1, I will either have to limit my hours severely, and God forbid that 1 is, I was sick, like I won't be able to open. So I was like, I can't do that. So I made a business decision.
I was about to say business.
Big business. To not be medical, to be adult use. But I also am sensitive to the needs of the medical community and want to make sure that they know that they have a place here, even though we're not necessarily a hybrid or medical dispensary. And so every medical patient who comes to LIT and shows their card or tells me they're medical, they're going to get 20% off. So, so that's already baked into the process because that's about the equivalent of taxes here. And that's basically what a medical patient doesn't pay. They just don't pay taxes.
Got you. Did you say it's already baked into the, you said baked, right?
Baked. I know. I have a tendency to use all the words.
No, I'm just saying. I'm listening, so I'm just saying. I said, did she say this awesome? So I love when you say this isn't just about weed. It's about wellness, wealth building, and walking fully in purpose. And to me, you seem to be coming from a more meaningful perspective and hitting the consumer from many different aspects. So why is this, you know what, you already said it, but let's do it again. Why is this important to you? You've already talked about it throughout this whole thing, really, you have.
Well, again, it's important, to provide access to plant-based medicine that I know is safe, that's tested, that isn't full of mold, that hasn't been expired. Like I can say to you, this is what it is, what it says on the bottle it is, and I can guarantee that to people. And it's really important. Some people who come to me for consultations or want to talk about cannabis are cancer patients, people who are immunosuppressed, different things that you don't want to play around with, mold or, products that are not healthy. And so that's one. I want it to be, even with the cards, that's what it was. I wanted to be able to provide culturally competent care. I want you to come in and see a person that looks like you so you can know that we are already on the same page with where you are and what we can do to help you. There's no judgment here. I also wanted to be able to create jobs and invite people. Everyone couldn't get a license. It's a limited license situation. But I did want to be able to invite people from the legacy market into the legal market to show them, the steps it takes to start a business, in a highly compliance-driven industry where there aren't a lot of people who look like us, but we have the skills to succeed.
Of course.
And so like even in the last couple of weeks, we've started training. I'm bringing on staff, and I just feel like they feel an elevation. Like most of the people used to sell, they like former weed men, weed women, or whatever. And so, I already see like a feeling of more professionalism, and like, one of the guys was saying to me, he's like, when you sell weed on the street, if a kid comes up to you and wants to buy weed, your bottom line is like, you sell weed, like you gotta sell weed. You like, there are certain things that rules don't apply in the streets that sometimes I don't necessarily agree with, but here, I can say that I'm only selling to adults. Like everything's aligned with my moral value, my moral compass. And, and a lot of people think that like people just do things because they don't care. They don't, like if you got to feed your kids and do whatever, like sometimes you do what you have to do, but that's not what you want to do, but you're limited in your options. So I wanted to be able to create options and opportunities that didn't limit people.
Right. Amazing. Once again.
Oh yeah, and I'm trying to get rich, y'all. Like I got kids and grandkids and a legacy that I'm attempting to build, but it's not a singular person that is going to benefit. Right. Not my staff will benefit. Like as we are expanding, like I'm going to be able to take these people who started with me here and make them regional directors and director of to be able to really give them skills to be professional. I pay probably more than I should, but I feel like I want people to know that they're valued and that you can live legally.
Well, you're getting like, I want to build some generational wealth, man. You out there doing your thing. I'm telling you, love you. You have an amazing story. You really, really do. So
hey, I didn't even tell you that.
I'm just listen. It's love. It really is. So now I have some West Coast family that sells CBD, and I've taken CBD, and it helped me tremendously. Mm-hmm. So I've also seen like many who have been helped using cannabis. So what are your thoughts on the CBD industry, and what is the major difference between the two?
So cannabis is made up of cannabinoids. There are major cannabinoids that we're familiar with, like THC, that gives you that cerebral high. Right. It has those psychoactive effects. That's what THC, that's that cannabinoid's job. Mm-hmm. CBD is similar, but instead of it being a cerebral experience, it's more of a body experience. Right. So like you rub a little CBD on your knee, your knee is gonna get high. You're gonna have a little CBD. And again, people say CBD isn't psychoactive. I say everything is a little bit to an extent, but there's no THC, which is what people are concerned with. But the cannabinoid plant has, I believe, the cannabis plant has 198 cannabinoids, and they all do different things. Okay. And so I'm a proponent of CBD. It's isolated from the plant, so you're focused on that one particular cannabinoid that has amazing effects. The United States has had a patent on CBD since the 1977. And so they've known it's been medicine for a very, very long time. Yeah. They list it as an anti-inflammatory and something else. And so, yes, I'm a proponent of CBD. I know people who make CBD products, and they are effective and they are useful. But what more than anything I'm a proponent of is the full plant. So THC is great. CBD is great. CBN is great. CBG is great. These are all different cannabinoids that have different effects. Right. One focus, one can help with sleep. But when they all work together, they create an entourage effect. And that is when you get the full benefit of the plant God created, when you're not taking out pieces and portions and parts.
Right. Wow. Once again, educated. I didn't know there was other things. I know CBD, THC, I know. And then you just hit me with the other stuff. So she is very knowledgeable, ladies and gentlemen, and all you amazing weed smokers out there. And listen, I know a few. Of course, I do music, and I've traveled a good many places around the world and seen a lot of stuff go on. It's been around a lot of people blazing up and enjoying themselves. And so it's like, and I've seen it in pill form. I've seen it in I've seen it in all kinds of ways, putting stuff in brownies and all kinds of things. And I just sit there, of course, because and I just look at it and I say, hey, man, it's love, man. Do what you do. Feel good. Feel good. And they do. Without hesitation, they do. So,
feel good. Open up your mind, your heart to creativity. Like expand the way in which you think. It definitely helps many artists in their creativity.
So what is the difference now? Okay, so I did a little looking into. So what is the difference between indicas and sativas? And how many hybrid strains are you aware of? Because you're a smart one. You know what's going on. You got it. What's up?
You got me stumped on how many. It's probably a kabillion now.
Really?
All you got to do is mix two together. So it's genetics happening all over the world. So that's what makes a hybrid strain. There's usually an indica and a sativa that get together and make a cannabis baby, and that's a hybrid. So let's see, what is the one I can think of off the top of my head? Electric Lemon G. I don't know this one. It is mostly sativa, but it does have a little indica in it. And the difference is, indica, you think in the couch. That is something that is those are my favorite because I definitely have undiagnosed ADHD or something like that. I'm always my brain goes. Indica calms my brain, allows me to be in the moment, not very off different places. I'll be out there. I'm stuck. Right. And that's it. It also usually helps people with sleep, appetite, things of that nature. So most people consume indicas, have the munchies. I got a drawer full of cupcakes and chips and stuff right now. Sativas are more of an upper. So if they're really high in THC, some people feel a little anxious, a little jittery, so I always tell people if they're consuming a straight sativa, which is kind of hard to find. It's kind of hard to find a straight anything anymore because of all the cross interactions. Right. Every time you make a new plant, there could be some variations. But for the most part, sativas are uppers. They kind of give you energy. Some say they can help with focus. It depends on what your focus is was in the first place, I think. And so you'll see a difference. The plants look different. Indicas, I believe, are shorter and fatter. And sativas are taller and thinner plants. So how they look and everything, that is a way you can tell the difference. But what really colors and tastes and flavors and makes the difference in cannabis, is that whole entourage effect, of course, so how all those cannabinoids work together. But it's also the things that flavor it, like the terpenes. So let me give you an example. So lavender. The terpene that makes that lavender scent, that lavender effect is called linalool. And it is in cannabis plants. You'll usually find them in an indica because remember I said it helps you relax and sleep, and that's what lavender does. If you have lavender on your pillow, it helps you get a good night's sleep, all those things. And so when it's in cannabis, it has that same effect. The one I mentioned, Electric Lemon G, the terpene is limonene. So this is what you're gonna have. You're gonna taste that citrusy, light, airy kind of flavor with that. So, and if you have citrus and light, that's more like up and sativa. So it's a few things that factor into the effect that you'll receive. But yes, one is the species of the plant. Would that be the species of that plant? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you telling me. So
I'm taking a speech.
So just like you were talking about, like the lavender and the do those come from the crossbreeding of plants? Is that is that all science more than anything when they're creating all these other strains? It's just scientific.
Genetics. It's literally genetics.
So they'll take this plant and put it with this plant. How many different plants are there?
In the world?
Not in the world. I'm just saying because
But I'm saying different type of cannabis plants in the world. Like, I mean, I believe that there could be several thousand different plants. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So once again, my ignorance, lack of knowledge. That's why I'm asking the questions, because I'm just like, you know the basic thing about weed, and then all this chronic purple and all this other stuff that came out of with the kids with gas and all this, whatever they call it. But the thing is that I remember being in Amsterdam on tour and going into some, seeing some of the shops and things like that, and it's just like, wow, man. It's just it was just so many different things, like in dispensaries and things like that. So.
I mean, you can smoke it, you can vape it, you can eat it, you can drink it, you can rub it on you, you can put it in your coffee, you can take a pill, you can use a suppository.
Right.
You can,
a suppository.
Oh yes.
She's a nurse, so she knows these things, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. So, in your opinion, what is the best product out there? Your personal favorite, and do you have your own strand like Big and Bolden?
So once my cultivation is open, I will definitely have some KEBRA Kush or something like that.
Right.
That I'm growing that'll be lit, lit branded and named after me and my mama. And
gotcha.
But the brands that are out there. So here's a little, I don't know how to say this without a little secret. A lot of these brands aren't sharing genetics. So if you see, I'll tell you one that does. With Khalifa Kush, there is a genetic that once I open my cultivation, I will probably be carrying Khalifa Kush.
Gotcha.
And how I will do that is that I will purchase or come up with an agreement to obtain their genetics and then recreate their genetics in my cultivation facility. And that's real Khalifa Kush. Some others, which I won't name, are more in brand.
Okay.
So they will make a nice brand name, a nice brand package, and sell them all throughout the country. So you'll have this particular brand all over, but the actual cannabis is different. Because they just sold a bag to someone. And someone said, I'm going to pick X bud and put it in this bag and name it that brand.
Got you. I got you.
So that, like, white labeling is something that, you can do too in this industry. And that happens a lot. But that's different in this regard, because it's not like you're putting your brand on someone else. You're putting a brand purchase on something you picked.
I got you. Now, great information. So, would we be surprised to know how many recreational cannabis users there are?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, across the board, we've seen statistics, especially when we look at criminalization, like people who go to jail or get arrested or pulled over for cannabis. There definitely are disparities there. So Black, brown, people of color are more usually anywhere between 5 to 10 more times likely to have an interaction related to cannabis, but our white counterparts use and consume pretty much at the same level. So,
people are
and once legalization happened, I feel like there is now a more open dialogue about it, and people are more willing to come out of the cannabis closet and profess their commitment to cannabis consumption. So yes, I think there are a lot of people who consume everyone wants to put certain look on like what it looks like when you're a cannabis consumer. But truth of the matter is that I think you'd be surprised like to know the doctors, the lawyers, the judges, the nurses who consume cannabis regularly to maintain mental health, mood stability, relax at the end of the day, sleep, eat if you have issues with appetite. So, it really helps with a lot of things. People who are addicted to opioids, cannabis has been proven to be an exit drug. If you consume cannabis, that can help reduce the cravings for opioids, which can kill you. So if you had to pick one, I think you'd rather want to be codependent on cannabis than opioids.
Of course. No, listen. I feel you. Listen, so I'm just gonna continue because I got like 9,000 things that I want to ask you, but I'm not gonna go that deep into it.
And we can talk again.
No, yes, indeed. So I'm gonna kind of get to wrapping it up. I got a few more things to ask you. So, what's the best way to enjoy cannabis in your professional opinion?
So, for me, as long as there aren't any contraindications to smoking, I enjoy smoking cannabis.
Okay.
I enjoy smoking cannabis socially with others. It usually, you spark a joint, sparks conversation, sparks, ideas, sparks, community in a special kind of way. So smoking is my preferred method. I also love edibles.
Okay.
Or my friend makes this Bucci juice. So like I like infused drinks. Vapes are probably my probably my least favorite.
Okay.
In that it's just, the process of making them, depending on, as long as you know who made it, you're good. But if it's some off-brand something, you vape the wrong thing, it could be detrimental to your health. So vapes are my. And then like concentrates would be like last, only because it's like a process, That's why I don't like it. You got to do all this stuff and set up a rig, and then you like just take a big old puff, and you can't start coughing for 20 minutes.
Like I say,
but there's also tinctures. I love tinctures. Tinctures kind of fall under the edible. Well, I wish I would have had a tincture bottle, but it's usually like a little dropper, and you put a certain number of drops based on whatever you dose in your water, your coffee in the morning or whatever, and it gives you an ongoing effect or short term depending on what you purchase.
Right. Oh, awesome.
Topicals. Topicals are great. When I get the little old ladies at the church who be like, I don't know about this weed thing, whatever. And so I take some cream out and rub it on their little arthritic knees, and then now they dance. Now they can do the rhythm fans that dance, and they coming back for more.
Oh, that's once again, I laugh so hard because I really pay attention and I can see what you're saying. So that's hilarious to me. It's truly hilarious.
But I mean, literally, there are elderly people, especially in our community, who are suffering and in pain. They're scared to death of opioids.
Yes.
They're tired they don't want their liver to break down from Tylenol, which I just heard some awful things about Tylenol. That's
right.
And so, they're like in pain. I remember one of my first people I certified for a medical cannabis card was like a 94-year-old woman who had hip surgery. Those are painful, intrusive, had hip surgery and would not take opioids. She was so afraid she was going to be addicted. And we ended up getting her a cannabis card and allowed her to have safe plant-based pain management. Like she's not afraid of dying, and she's actually happier, eating better, her mood is elevated. It's just a beautiful thing.
I got you. Okay, so just a couple more things here. So what does success look like to you?
Honestly, I haven't opened my doors here yet, and I've been an entrepreneur for almost next year will be a decade. I've had several businesses. in addition to my nursing career.
Right.
But success for me is me talking about this particular business and getting nothing but community support and love.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if it's not, even if people are like, I don't consume cannabis, but I'm coming to buy some socks. Like, I see what you're doing. Like, right. That's what makes a difference to me. Like, that people could actually see the God in me. Because when they see me, that's who I pray that they see. Like, they see a reflection of God, because I try to emanate love, respect, honor people. Like, for instance, like a young man was murdered here in my dispensary like 10 years ago when it was a club. And we dedicated a mural to him. We're honoring people. And so I feel like it's success when you're able to do things with excellence and when you're able to affect change. And I do feel like, even though I haven't opened the door yet, that, I've been instrumental in affecting change here. I mean, I have a grand opening next week, but last week a young man got murdered. He was 15-year-old boy got killed. And I was supposed to be on my marketing people like, promote. And I'm like, how could I?
Right.
How could I like sit here and promote a business when a kid, so like for days I didn't promote my business. I asked people in the community to pray. And then we had a citywide prayer for an hour, to pray for the violence in our community. Right. That trumps any business situation, any business decision, like, because I care about the community. That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm doing it for.
Yeah, you've got empathy, and I could tell through this whole conversation of getting to know you better, and to me that's a great thing. It really is. You're concerned about a lot more things than just making money, and we all want to get paid and all those things. That's a beautiful thing, but you really, really care, and I respect that, and that really is a beautiful thing. So, why do you feel Lit should be the go-to dispensary for cannabis when you open?
Because it's a vibe. Like, it's a whole vibe. Anybody who walks in here is a vibe. We're different than any other dispensary here in the state. We are traditionally here in Connecticut, we've had a pharmaceutical model. So most of the dispensaries are corny. even the newer one, like most of the new ones are like, they got corny names. Like, I want to say one of the names so bad, but I don't want to disparage nobody. But like, your name is corny. Like, and so like, I just feel like I bring a whole different vibe. Right. We're here to educate. It's people. One might say my staff is too black. I was thinking like, I gotta hire a white person or something. But like, we're like, you come in, you see people who look like you, who come from you, and like, in my staff, they're gonna be inviting their friends and their former customers and their people to come here. So and we're having events. So like, one of the people who just joined my staff, he is like a well-known singer in our community, and doesn't like. He like, could I work for you? Absolutely, I'll work here singing. Right. Invite your friends to come here, those kind of things. So our difference is that we are catering to we're serving the community. Got you.
Now that's once again, awesome. So when are you guys? When is the grand opening?
It's Thursday, May 1st at 4 p.m. We are going to cut our ribbon at 4:20 on the dot. But I mean, it's going to be amazing. We have like food trucks lining up. So I called, people I know in the community with food trucks. They're going to line up. I'm closing off my parking lot to parking. We're going to have vendors set up. We're going to have a table where somebody's going to show people how to roll joints. We're going to have a DJ outside from the whole night from 4 to 10 and, photo booths, just fun interaction, community. Of course, people can come in the store and purchase cannabis. And a steel band. We got a steel band. Trying to get my church choir to come, but I don't know if my pastor gonna let him. He said he's still on the fence about.
Hey, what does Smokey say? It's from the earth for me and you. Come on, church. Come on, church, folks.
That's what I'm trying to say. If I have my way, we'd have a choir, we have a marching band, we have step show, like karaoke. Definitely karaoke. Well, there will be karaoke probably before the end of the night anyway. So.
Right. No, but definitely, you listen, young lady. This has been amazing. I've enjoyed this conversation greatly. Thank you for educating and also, letting it be known and shown what you're doing. And hey, if it was more of these places across the United States, like I'm saying, I'm in South Carolina. We're not there yet,
Yeah.
But
y'all in struggle,
but it's still, having entrepreneurs like yourself handling business and once again, educating people is a great thing. Continue to do so. And I just want you to know that you're welcome to come back and talk about whatever you want, anytime you want. Just like, we're family. I always tell people that, and I really mean that. I appreciate your time. And if you don't mind, please give my watchers and listeners your get in touch and support information if they would like.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun having this conversation. So I appreciate you. And you threaten me with a good time. So watch me come back again, y'all.
Hey, you're welcome. Yeah.
But so Lit New Haven is opening May 1st at 4 p.m. We're at 169 East Street in New Haven, Connecticut. We're online at litnewhaven.com. And it's just like it sounds, LIT. newhaven.com. And we're on Instagram at Lit New Haven. And if you want to follow me as well, my name a little corny. I told you I was corny. KBreezy494 on Instagram. And I'm Kebra LaShawn Smith on Facebook. And my email is kebra@litnewhaven.
Indeed. Awesome. Listen, I had to tell some people tell me, just like my kids tell me, you're not corny. You're not that. You're just you, So embrace the greatness of you. That's all you have to do. That's what it is. Yeah, no more. I'm thinking this, though. It's either you go, what a Star Wars thing. You either do or do not,
Right. Right.
So, no, it's all love. But once again, thank you very, very much. I've had a great time, great conversation for you, young lady. Continue support. I applaud you in all that you're doing. Most definitely.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, no doubt. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another Live and Loud with the Lord exclusive in association with the CMS Network and 5 Royals ENT. Thank you for taking the time to spend some time with the Lord, Nelson, that is. And until next time, stay loud, stay passionate, and always support real music and real people and real entrepreneurs doing real things. And as I always like to say, more love, less hate. No doubt about it. You guys be good. Peace.
Turn it up. You're listening to Live and Loud with the Lord, Nelson, that is.